Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the first episode of the Straight Up Texas podcast presented by Whataburger. I'm Rangers broadcaster Jared Sandler, joined by the founder of Texas Humor, Jay Sauceda. And together, we are your hosts for the Straight Up Texas podcast presented by Whataburger. Before we get going, got to remind you that Whataburger, always tons of great stuff. What about the sweets? They got some great sweet treats for you. Something that's going to cool you down this summer and satisfy that craving for something fresh and delicious. We'll swing by Whataburger and try out the peaches and cream shake. I wish I had a peaches and cream shake in one of these, but it's a refreshing take on, of course, a classic summertime dessert combo. And don't wait, because like a lot of these summer items, they are available for a limited time. So head on over to Whataburger and grab you a peaches and cream shake. All right, so the Straight Up Texas podcast, what is it? Well, first of all, it's the official podcast of the Texas Rangers. So we will be talking Rangers, but it's more than that. It's not going to be a deep dive into the analytics of baseball. We'll cover what's going on in Rangers land, but we're also going to have a great group of celebrities join us to talk about the Texas spirit and their role within creating that Texas spirit. Texans are proud, they're passionate, they're resilient. We think highly of ourselves and who we are as Texans, but we'll discuss what really goes into being a Texan and some of the elements of culture that play a part in that. We see that same spirit in the Rangers. It's a young, fearless team. It's a big part of what Chris Woodward, Rangers manager, preaches to this team as they continue to grow towards returning to that place of glory that we all experienced as Rangers fans last decade, for the most part of last decade. So we'll kick off each episode talking a little bit about the Rangers, but then we're going to bring you a conversation with an awesome guest. We'll tell you who our guest for episode 1 is in a second, but just a reminder, you can enjoy this podcast either via audio or video. Video, just go to the Rangers YouTube channel. Audio, texasrangers.com/podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Castbox, or anywhere else you can listen to podcasts. We'd love to have you join us and be along for the ride. All right, so our guest today, and I'm super excited about this, is Brad Leland. Jay, Brad Leland, DFW born, actor. He's been in movies, TV shows. He's a thespian, and we'll talk about all that with him. But I'm pretty pumped to chat with Brad. I don't know that there is an actor other than maybe Matthew McConaughey who embodies Texas the way that Brad Leland does.
I mean, Friday Night Lights just in general embodies Texas in a way that few shows do in general. So yeah, I'm super pumped to get to meet him. Big fan of the show, and yeah, it's going to be a good kickoff episode after that little fun trailer that we did. I'm excited that we're getting to start off on this one.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get to Brad here in a bit, but I guess we got to start with some Rangers talk to begin this.
Yeah, so like as a longtime Rangers fan, I'm curious, what your stance or what your feeling is about Elvis Andrus coming back to Globe Life Field for the first time. What do you feel like his legacy is to the Rangers team?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're having this conversation, and Elvis will make his return to Arlington today. You might be listening to this sometime in the future. As a matter of fact, you will be listening to this in the future because we're not live. But Elvis's legacy is, I think it's first of all, in a word, significant. He was the starting shortstop on the best Rangers teams in franchise history. The Rangers, of course, made the playoffs a few times in the mid to late 90s for the first time in franchise history. But the best teams were clearly the 2010, 2011 teams. And then for a few years thereafter, the Rangers had the best record in the American League in 2016, and Elvis was a big part of that in the years between, their playoff appearances. And, the shortstop is maybe not as impactful of a position as the quarterback, but it's definitely a position of tremendous responsibility. And when you look at a team's roster, you think, hey, who's the shortstop? Like, I want to know who the shortstop is. And that was Elvis. And the other part of this is the Rangers' acquisition of Elvis in a trade that sent Mark Teixeira to Atlanta was probably the move that really helped expedite the rebuild process under John Daniels. It was a trade that sent Ron Mahay and Mark Teixeira to the Braves. The Rangers got Jared Saltalamacchia, who didn't quite pan out, but then three guys who really did: Matt Harrison, Neftali Feliz, and Elvis Andrus. And then Bo Jones was the fifth, and it didn't really pan out for Bo, but three guys who had a significant impact on this team. So Elvis was a part of that as well. And then on top of that, the final leg or another leg is that you have a Latin American player who spoke the English language well. And that's important because he was able to connect with fans, both Spanish speaking fans and English speaking fans. And, you know, that to go along with the smiling face, the charisma, the impact he had in the community. You know, is Elvis Andrus going to be a Hall of Famer? No, he's not. He'll be a Rangers Hall of Famer, but he's not going to go to Cooperstown. But that shouldn't diminish the impact he had on this organization and the fan base. And there's a reason why Elvis, who made a couple of all-star teams, even when he maybe wasn't putting up big-time numbers, was still a fan favorite. And I think there's something to that. And so I think his legacy is tremendous. I expect him to get a huge ovation when he is announced, you know, both in the starting lineup and his first time coming up to bat. And I'm getting chills thinking about that. I think the connection between athletes and a community can be really special. And Elvis definitely forged that type of relationship.
Well, I mean, you know, given that obviously he's not playing for the Rangers, you know, and so Elvis can't represent the team at the All-Star game, but who would you put up for the All-Star game this year?
Yeah, so, you know, I think the Rangers have four guys who are deserving of that sort of honor. One guy's Adolis Garcia. I think he's one. He's having a great year. He's among the most productive outfielders in the American League. Probably won't be voted in as a starter, but maybe you stuff the ballots, then maybe he can get up there. But I think he deserves that. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, if you look at the complete player and you factor in what he does on the bases and what he does defensively, tough to argue against Isaiah Kiner-Falefa being an all-star. And then there are two pitchers, Ian Kennedy and Kyle Gibson, who definitely deserve it. Gibby has arguably been the best starter in the American League. The problem is, you know, the Rangers don't have the best record. And because every team has to get at least one all-star, it sometimes takes away from guys who might be deserving. And typically teams with better records are going to get the benefit of the doubt. So the reality is, are all four guys going to be named all-stars? Probably not. But those four guys are definitely deserving. I think that, you know, it would be a tremendous honor for Kyle Gibson. It would be his first all-star game. Same with Izzy, same with Adolis. And I think that if I had to power rank them in some order, those three would maybe be just ahead of Ian Kennedy. Not to take anything away from what Ian's done, but those are the names that really should be strongly considered for the All-Star game.
How far out, how many years do you think we have until we see an All-Star game over at Globe Life Field?
It's a great question. I don't think too long. My guess is in the next this is 2021. I would say by 2025, there will be an All-Star game at Globe Life Field. And that's really exciting. You know, when you know, at the time, the ballpark in Arlington, Globe Life Park, hosted an all-star game in the mid-90s. You know, it was such a cool event. I hear so many stories from folks about it. I didn't get to go. I was, you know, just a few years old. But usually when you get a new ballpark, an all-star game is going to follow. And I'd say that with Globe Life Field hosting the National League postseason run in the World Series and how well it was received by Major League Baseball and how much the players love the amenities at Globe Life Field, I don't think it's going to be a tough decision for Major League Baseball. I'm really excited about that. I think the All-Star game is such a cool event. You got the home run derby, the game itself, and it's such a great way to promote the game of baseball. And hopefully we'll have some Rangers to promote whenever it rolls around. And hopefully the game's in a great place and get to promote some of the young stars.
Couldn't agree more.
All right. Are you ready to do this? Because I'm pretty excited to talk to Brad.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get Brad on here.
All right, it's time now to chat with our special guest. You might know him as Buddy Garrity from one of my favorite shows of all time, Friday Night Lights, or John Aubrey from one of my favorite movies of all time, Friday Night Lights. But he's an incredibly accomplished and versatile actor. He's a DFW native, a former high school football state champion. I don't know what gets more Texas than that. It's time to chat with the great Brad Leland. Brad, what's going on? Thanks so much for spending some time with us.
Oh, thanks, Jared. Yeah, it's really busy now. Thank goodness, and we're starting to be COVID free. I and production is back, and so I'm happy to be ready to go back to work. It's been a long time, but I coined this phrase recently, and now we can stop being blanched COVIDians.
Well, now that you're getting out, I mean, I was just kind of, because one of my favorite bits that you did was on Veep, right? Like, you've been in everything, but obviously most people, a lot of folks know you as Buddy Garrity. Like, is there a Texas role or a Texas character that you haven't played or that you wish that you played?
I missed on the Alamo. It would have been tremendous to be part of that historical project with Billy Bob. I wish I could have probably done that one. I also was doing another picture when the auditions came up for Lonesome Dove, and that was another one. A lot of my buddies, I know practically everybody in that show. So those are the first two that come to mind that I missed. One of them because I already had another role, the other one because they didn't choose me. So, that's the way it goes. So I guess those are the two I would think about. One that I'm glad that I did not do, and I probably shouldn't say this, but what was that picture they did right before ours that was ridiculous? Oh, Varsity Blues. No, I'm glad I missed that one, because had I got Moxley, the guy's dad, that's who I was up for in that picture. Had I got that, I would have never done Friday Night Lights. So thank goodness. That's one of those times. Thank goodness I didn't get it.
Well, I mean, speaking of just kind of things you get, things you don't, I remember I was going through your Wikipedia page the other night, just looking at, all the older things that you've done. And one of my favorite credits was just Drunk Cowboy from Square Dance. Like, I love that there wasn't even a name attached to it. It was just Drunk Cowboy. Do you remember that role? Or that part?
Well, yeah, what I remember was it was very early in my career, and it was tremendous actors. And the first for, I think that was Winona Ryder's first picture.
Yeah.
And she was like 15 or 16 years old.
Yep.
And who else? Rob Lowe was in that. I didn't even know who he was.
Well, and he looked somehow younger than he does now. I mean, he looked 8 years old. Movie.
Right. And then the great Jane Alexander, who to me was the consummate actor and such an example for me at a young age. I remember during the rap party, which I got invited to, even though it was a very small role for me. I was at the rap party, and I remember Jane Alexander making a speech and remembering and thanking every single actor and every single person on the crew, remembering everyone's name and having a little tidbit to say about them. And I said, someday I would love to do that. That's a very special person who can do that, and then give the credit where it's due to the cast and crew. And she really made an impression on me on that film. I can't believe you brought that up. I've never talked about that picture. I haven't, but that's cool. It was cool. It was to be in Fort Worth too. It was fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Brad, I want to ask you about Friday Night Lights. First, so you mentioned, getting back to work. What are some of the things that you've got coming up or things people should look out for?
Well, right now, Jared, I've got the picture Land I did with Robin Wright, who I was always in love with her. My daughters loved Princess Bride. And then, of course, Forrest Gump, which, she was Jenny in Forrest Gump. And then, of course, she was in House of Cards. So I'm thinking, I don't think about anything except House of Cards and what a statuesque, regal, tall, strong, powerful woman that I'm about to meet. So I go to Canada, And I get there and, they get off the plane and I go straight into rehearsal. It's just Robin and I and the cinematographer, just the three of us. And she's a tiny little sweet. I'm thinking of this giant, powerful woman. And, she's like 5'2" or something, just the sweetest little, she was Jenny. I mean, she was Jenny from Forrest Gump and she was the Princess Bride. And I did a picture with her that's out right now called Land. It's on a streaming platform. I can't remember which one, Netflix or Amazon.
Yeah, I think Amazon Prime, I think.
Amazon Prime. And she's wonderful in it. I have a very small role in it, but I was just happy to be in it because it's a very small cast. And I get to play with her for just a bit. Of course, a lot, as usual, a lot of our stuff was edited, but it really didn't matter because the story is told and it's a beautiful tearjerker and a gorgeous picture. So I wish people would see Land. It's really good.
Well, on that note about just kind of, somebody being a surprise that you weren't really expecting one way or the other, who's your favorite character from Friday Night Lights other than yourself?
Good Lord, that's hard. In a way, besides Kyle, and I love Connie and all the main guys, and my fake daughter, I still call her on her birthday, and Minka, it's your fake dad, happy birthday, fake daughter, hello fake daughter, and she's always kind and we still visit, but she was the one who told me that, Buddy was always, of course, drenched in sweat. And by the way, that wasn't makeup. That was the fact that we were shooting in 105 degrees. And I always had a suit and tie on, it was horrible. But Minka one time told me, she was like, Dad, you're so gross. You just sweat all the time. And, it'd be 105 degrees in an apartment with no air conditioning because they can't turn on the AC or the cameras hear it. The sound guy hears it. So I'm like, and she goes, oh, I don't sweat. I know how to not sweat. But the little girl never sweat ever. Now that's not my favorite character. My favorite character was probably the fact that Buddy Jr. came and they picked a young man who was his first time. He was from the Northwest and he and I became great buddies. His dad had not ever been around really much his whole life. And I had daughters, so I never had a son. So we sort of had this strange, wonderful relationship where we were almost like father and son in real life. And we became really good friends, hung out together in Austin. I showed him all over Texas and took him with some friends who we went to some really exotic places in a friend's plane. And I got to be good buddies with him. And then his storyline, because he tore up his Achilles actually in the show, in real life, on his very first play, where he was out on the field, somehow he came off the field and they were all congratulating him because it was Buddy Jr.'s time to break through in the show and be a star football player. And that was his character arc, that he was going to be great because he got, he was going to come off of drugs and be a good kid because he got involved with sports and all of that. And he came off the field and, they were congratulating him, and one of the big linemen landed on the back of his heel, and he immediately screamed and laid on the ground, and he had flop foot, and he looked up at me, and I was looking at him, and it was almost like real. I was like, are you okay? And he looked at me, and he said, no. And we found out 10 minutes later that they snapped his Achilles. And so we thought he would probably be out of the show, just written out. And I thought this entire storyline between Buddy and Buddy Jr. would go away. But instead, they allowed him to be on the show, wrote it as if he still was part of the team, even though he was injured. And what's ironic about that is that's exactly what happened to me in my real life during the state championship at Plano. So it became ironically and exotically the coolest thing that could ever happen, because it actually made it much richer that his character was able to be a part of the team, and they accepted him, and he could learn that value without even ever playing. And I believe that was sort of divine intervention. That's a long answer, but that was cool. So maybe Buddy Jr. was my favorite character for that reason.
Did you, Brad, when you guys, like, I remember, and we've spoken about this before, I did not watch Friday Night Lights, the TV show, live initially. I so loved the book and the movie, and I wasn't sure if the TV show was going to be something I liked. And then maybe like when season 3 was getting rolled out, I went back and I watched season 1, and then I was hooked. And it seems like Friday Night Lights is one of these shows that has had such a fandom develop maybe after the fact, that there's still like, it's still such a relevant, popular show now. I still hear from people who start Friday Night Lights, recently, and they roll through it. Did you guys realize like I don't know, for lack of a better word, aftertaste, such like a great aftertaste? Did you guys realize that you guys were creating something special when you all first got together? Because I mean, I can't tell you how many people will identify, like myself, Friday Night Lights as one of their favorite TV shows of all time.
Well, first of all, thank you. And, we have noticed that, and no, we did not know it. Now, did we know that we sort of had lightning in a bottle? Yes. And the reason we knew that was because we knew that we were doing it. We were doing television like it had never been done before, with the improv, with the handheld cameras, with the spontaneity, with the lack of rehearsals, with shooting not on a set, but on locations all of the time, being on the move, and having the network approval. To having NBC to approve such a thing is kind of insane, but they trusted Peter Berg, the director. And Peter told us from the very beginning, excuse me, we sat around a table at dinner in Austin, and he said, guys, these are your characters. Now we're going to be sending you the scripts, and these are great writers. You'll love the scripts. But if you feel something about your character, if you want to add a line, change a line, go with it. It's yours. We're going to let you do that. And so it sort of gave us this actor freedom that none of us had ever had. And that, I think, established that sort of reality that gives it that sort of fly on the wall feeling when you're watching it. You sort of feel like you're there and you know these people, rather than, oh, that's a television actor. Oh, look, he's saying his lines. So it's cut, headshot. It's blah, it's the same old. Instead, you got a completely different look, and it felt real because lots of times it was real. Not to say that Kyle and I were pounding beers and whiskey. That was still not real, but we would just walk into the bar or into the office and not rehearse, and they would just start rolling, and we would just act as if it was he and I talking. And so there was something to that. We knew we had something special with that. Did we know that it would turn into what you just said, which it's amazing to me. I'm on this Cameo program where people can, ask for a cameo, about that app where you do cameos for people. And it's amazing how many people all over the world know Friday Night Lights. And we get requests from Australia and, all over Europe. And it's just, it has grown, like you said, it's grown exponentially because people relate to it, not because it's about Texas high school football, because it's not. Obviously, a show about community, with teachers and coaches and relationships, and everybody has those, no matter what language you speak and no matter where you live in the world. There's something that binds a community together, and usually it's some athletic event or something like that where everybody comes together for that one night each week, and that's why the show has done what it has worldwide. And no, we had no idea it'd go crazy. We've never been off the air since the show ended. And it's 11 or 12 years since we stopped shooting, and it's been showing ever since. And I think it might be one of those shows that continues to show forever. So hopefully we're the sort of modern day Andy Griffith.
Well, I've heard people in the past describe, from a marketing perspective, I guess, Texas is like as a flyover state, right? Like, us, the Midwest, like the folks on the coast in Hollywood and New York, kind of all the production companies and all that kind of stuff happens there. What has it been like being an actor in Texas and staying busy? I mean, like, is it easy? Is it hard? Do you have to still sort of find yourself going to the coast to drum up work? I mean, what does that look like?
Well, for many years, we would get in our cars and drive to auditions, and all the Texas actors were here. We knew the Louisiana guys, we knew the New Mexico guys. And so we would drive all over the place, all the way to Florida, all the way to Colorado, all the way to California. And we would audition, and, you go in the room and it's all these people. And then you drive back home and you find out you got to call back, so you have to drive back. So we used to spend a lot of money and a lot of time driving to these places to audition, and and then you got them, and lots of times they used the big Hollywood stars for their main roles, and then we got to pick up all the supporting roles, which was fantastic for many years. And then for me, it occurred about year. I really haven't had that many agents, and they were the three I had for many years were here in Dallas. And then during Friday Night Lights, my agent that I had, the wonderful Nancy Johnson, had just retired, and it was just time for me to have a new agent. And I picked up a Hollywood LA agent who has been tremendous ever since. And so I've been with him for many years now, and it totally changed the landscape for me, because it really doesn't matter now where you live. And our auditions many times are this. Recently I had a Zoom call with the Scorsese people and DiCaprio. They're shooting that picture, Killing, up in Oklahoma right now, and everybody in the world wanted to be in that picture, of course, and so having that Zoom call with them is the type of audition we have now, and it's much easier, and we're not driving, and we're not waiting in a room with a bunch of people and then going into the audition room. It's just it's much more difficult because you get a two-dimensional person. They don't get to meet you, and I prefer meeting people in real life, but this is the way we do it now, and it's really much simpler. And I've been lucky to be here in Texas and have worked all these years, however it came. So now it's off in the wild blue yonder.
We're chatting with Brad Leland. This is the Straight Up Texas podcast presented by Whataburger. Just a reminder, the Peaches and Cream Shake available at Whataburger. Go take advantage. It is a limited time opportunity. Brad, you are true Texan here. What? Yeah, that's right. There you go. What's your look at that
here, guys? Although I'm almost flat bill, which this is horrible. Everyone that does this on earth, stop it now. A hat is supposed to look like this. Come on, people. What's wrong with you young people? All right, I'm wearing this. Go ahead.
No, listen, you had the Rangers hat, now the Whataburger hat. What is your go-to Whataburger order?
Oh, this is the truth. My wife has a Whataburger 3 times a week at least. That's what she wants for lunch, so I go get her one. She's homebound, and so I go get her one. And she always has just a regular. What she has is ridiculous. It's just a Whataburger with nothing on it except mustard and some tater tot. Some onion rings or fries. But what I get, of course, is a double meat cheeseburger with everything on it, mayonnaise instead of mustard, and sometimes I get fries, but that's already about 1,500 calories just for whatever that double meat. Oh, and a patty melt is unbeatable. A patty melt is extremely wonderful. It's just probably not for those on an extreme diet.
It's there's so many great options there. So, this is Brad, the Straight Up Texas podcast, and a lot of what we're going to be doing and want to do with you here is really just talk about how your life, and for you specifically, acting has kind of intertwined with Texas and the Texas spirit. And we talk about things like resilience and pride and passion and fearlessness when you think about Texas. And we were just talking about Friday Night Lights, and there are 2 phrases that emerged from Friday Night Lights that have become very popular that 20 years from now we're going to be saying, and people aren't going to realize the origins. And that's clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose, and then Texas Forever. And I think Texas Forever was in the first episode between Jason Street and Tim Riggins. They were talking about their future plans, and they kind of bumped fists, and Texas Forever. And I'm curious, what did you guys realize that was going to be such those 2 words were going to be such a big thing? And what does that phrase mean to you? Because it seems like in a lot of ways, perhaps you embodied what Texas Forever might represent.
Well, I'm certainly a 5th generation Texan, and the answer to the question is no. We had no idea, and even those 2 young actors probably had no idea that Texas Forever was going to become what it has, and it really has on those cameos that I do, many people ask for that phrase. They love that phrase, no matter where they're from. And I think maybe when you really think about it, I just now thought of this, but Texas Forever probably has more ramifications, not only because of just the show and the feeling that those guys had, that those characters had about how much they love Texas, but maybe it does go back to the Alamo. Maybe it does go back to the fact that really freedom, the price of freedom, the motto then, the price of freedom was death. And that has been the price of freedom in this country. And really in Texas, when Texas did what it did with the Alamo, that was the very first time that had happened in this country. And I think that sort of set the standard, and maybe that became the reason that we are a free country. And maybe, very, very subtly and underneath, the wars we've been in, many, many people have died for us to be a free country and for us to be what we are. So maybe that was the birth of that. That's all I could say, is maybe it sort of gets underneath everybody because that's really what it means. I don't know. That's my guess.
Well, you're obviously a North Texas guy, but you spent some time in the Panhandle, grew up there, around Dallas. What are the, when you can find yourself getting away from the North Texas part of the state, where do you find yourself vacationing? Do you make it down to the coast? Are you a Central Texas person? Do you go to West Texas for the dust and reliving the Friday Night Lights experience? Where do you head?
Well, first of all, one of my daughters is a nurse in Lubbock, and it's not Lubbock, it's Lubbock. And the other daughter, who has been a professional dancer and has been living in Austin, graduated from TCU a couple of years ago, is now becoming a nurse as well. So they're both in Lubbock. And that's not where I go for exotic vacations, but I do travel through there on my way to New Mexico, because I love Ruidoso and I've always been there. It's a quaint and wonderful little place, and we used to ski there all the time when there was a lot of snow, and sometimes there still is. Of course, I love New Mexico, Taos, Santa Fe. Santa Fe to me is one of the greatest places to be. It's just, there's a vibe there that I love, which unfortunately is changing just a little bit as flocks of people move in there, but it's still an enchanted. I think New Mexico is the land of enchantment, so I love it there. But to tell you the truth, I really don't really take planned vacations, and when I do, a lot of times they're to Austin, down there to play golf with all my buddies and do some charity golf down there, because we made so many friends during FNL, and I hooked into Ben Crenshaw and all his buddies, and so I get to play golf down there, and so that's kind of the place I go if I'm actually going. But really, my job is the thing that gives me exotic vacations and places. Recently going to Paris to do many episodes of a show that's now here in the United States called The Bureau. Mm-hmm. A sweet first class journey quite a few times back and forth to Paris isn't bad, and it's all paid for, and it's like a vacation. And then every time I have to go to California, it's always a paid vacation. And now I'm getting paid to go back to Canada here in 2 weeks to do a brand new show for HBO, a new HBO series. So those are my really exotic vacations.
Wait, are you telling me that a first class flight to Paris is better than a drive down I-35 to Austin, Texas to see your daughter? Hopefully she's not listening to this and hearing that you prefer to be wined and dined and taking a nap. But the audience that I have on Texas Humor, I don't think that there'd be very many people disagreeing with the idea that a lot of people would rather be doing something other than driving down I-35 on any given day. So
that's true. I will give you one little word of advice. I counted them one time, and during Friday Night Lights, I made nearly 100 round trips, and I always drove because it's much easier than going to the airport and going through that hassle. And from my home in just north suburb here of Dallas to downtown Austin, I've done it in 2 hours and 40 minutes, 2 hours and 30 minutes. And it's not me going fast, it's everyone else. And I'm just kind of following them, right? But if you do it between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. in the afternoon during the week, it's nothing. Yeah. And if you do it on weekends or certain other times, then you can come across that. But they've nearly finished it. I've made a couple of trips recently, so it's not as bad as it used to be. And there's a trick to it. It's the time you go. Or of course, you go in the middle of the night, it's cool. But now it doesn't matter anyway, because everyone is driving 100 miles an hour. It's insane. Yeah. I go 82 or 84, and I'm, except for those times when I was doing that 2 hours and a 2.5 hour deal. That's probably pushing it.
I'm old enough to remember at one point, I don't remember if this was statewide, but I remember in Houston, they were trying to lower the emissions and they changed the speed limit to 55 miles an hour on the freeway. And everybody was like, are you kidding me? 55 miles on 610 or I-45? I mean, of course, nobody followed the rules. But, so yesterday was Father's Day, and Instagram was just filled with people barbecuing, grilling, everybody just putting on their best New Balances and jean shorts and rocking the dad cooking in the backyard. So like I come over to Brad's house for Father's Day or any given weekend, or your kids are coming home to, spend time with you and your wife. What is on the Brad Leland grill or smoker on any given weekend?
Okay. Well, for many, many years when the girls were growing up, I cooked. I've always been the cook in our family. My wife has probably cooked 3 meals in the 44 years we've been married. And I enjoy it too. So if I'm gone out of town, she orders food in or whatever. When I grill, it's pretty much anything, it's always the great New York or a ribeye. And now it's fun to do those giant dinosaur things. But anything, I'm pretty much everything. I like all food, obviously. So it could be anything, I could even throw fish on the grill or something, quickly, as long as it stays nice and juicy. Fish is great. So it could be anything. Yesterday, unfortunately, Father's Day was taking my wife, who's been ill, to the emergency room. So I spent yesterday in the emergency room most of the day. And then after I got her back home and she was okay, I went out and had my favorite food in the world, which is sashimi. So I went to my favorite sushi place and ate almost all of the fish he had.
Is there a particular sushi that you're fond of?
Well, I like pretty much everything, but it's usually not sushi. It's usually just sashimi, just wonderful cuts. Yeah. And I pretty much like them all. Of course, Toro is wonderful. And then, some of the things that I eat at the end, other people don't eat. I mean, I even love things like monkfish liver and, right now you can't even get it. Why is it jumping out of my head? It's never mind. I'll think of it in 10 seconds. I have a 66-year-old brain. It's like a pinball machine. The ball rolls around for a little while. It finally falls in the hole, and I remember what it is.
Well, I'll ask you this, and I mean, are there other sort of Texas cuisines, right? Like, because I grew up southeast of Houston, but I have a lot of family from South Texas. So eating menudo after a long night of drinking is the way to do it for me. Are there any of those sort of like Texas delicacies that most people don't eat that you like?
Well, I wouldn't say most people don't eat them, and I wouldn't say it's a Texas delicacy, but it is for me because I'm almost a Louisiana boy at heart. We actually, I could. Well, I won't go into full Cajun just quickly, but what would happen with me is mud bugs. I'm a mud bug guy, so crawfish. We used to call them crawdaddies, and I'll sit down with you, buddy, and have about 6 or 8 pounds of those if you'd like to. No need for the corn or the new potatoes or anything else they might throw in there, just mud bugs. And, the other night, my buddy called me and he goes, go to this place and get some bugs. You wouldn't believe how big they are. And I went there and it truly blew me away. Jay, because they were literally, I got 2 pounds and it was only 6 bugs. That's how big they were. They were all lobsters, like this big. I mean, I was even eating the claws. They were so huge. So I love them. I love them as long as they're not, as long as you can still get into them and they're not old creatures that you can't break through. But I love to sit down with people, and I think it's a kind of a party, and it's kind of fun to sit there for hours. People are like, it's too much trouble, but there's something social about sitting around eating a bunch of crawfish.
Well, it is kind of interesting to me. I've been talking to folks about this because when I was growing up, I mean, you would have it over on the other side of Houston. There was no big deal. There were Cajun people everywhere, so there was plenty of crawfish around. But when I first moved to Austin about 20 years ago, and I told people I wanted to do a boil here, I mean, there was maybe 1 or 2 places you could buy it. Now you can roll up to HEB and they're selling it, all through crawfish season, which is pretty cool seeing how that culture, sort of develops. But
right.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't have a place. There was one place when we were shooting Friday Night Lights, one place to get crawfish in Austin. And I couldn't understand it because we had so many places here in Dallas that we could get them. I said, why don't they have them in Austin? That's closer than we are. But they didn't. I guess people there just, I don't know. I don't know why that was, but it's not that way anymore, as you well know. You can get them.
Yeah.
And Jay mentioned this earlier, like the list of credits for you is almost never ending. It's in TV and film, even in theater. And I know you got a show coming up in Richardson, but the intersection of Texas and Texas culture and entertainment, whether it's characters or movies or like filming location, when you think of film and Texas, what stands out? Obviously for a lot of people and for you, I'm sure Friday Night Lights is a big part of that. In addition to Friday Night Lights, what else stands out?
Well, people sort of forget some of the great classics, that were filmed here, even back when filming first began. I mean, you go back even farther than Giant, with Rock Hudson and the beginning of Marfa, before Marfa became the coolest place and the destination for everybody in the world to go to Big Bend, which is impossible to drive to. It takes you about 3 weeks to drive there from here. And, and then people are flying in there now from all over the world, especially a bunch of Hollywood types and very wealthy people. And so, exploring that whole thing, and then, our landscapes and our settings in Texas are vast and complete. I mean, you can go to beaches, you can go to piney woods, you can go to deserts in West Texas, you can go to the sand dunes where we used to. People can't believe this, but you could actually sand surf in a town in Monahans where we would go, and it'd be very hot, but we put on our tennis shoes and they had these sand surfboards, and you would surf on hills of sand and nearly melt your tennis shoes, and hopefully you wouldn't fall down and be covered in sand about 110 degrees. But the locations is what I'm talking about, and the history of film here is so vast. People could look it up and see the films that have been made here, and they probably would be surprised at the great pictures we've had here. Academy Award pictures, and just we have resources, and unlike some of the other states, we have resources which are small towns and giant cities. We had Dallas, showing the giant city type situation, and then Walker, all of those things that have lasted here for a long, long time, and given people a really good dose of what Texas is like.
Well, that's it. And Monahans, I think, I could be wrong, but I want to say the real life Booby Miles is I think lives in Monahans, Texas now. I believe. I remember from watching like the special features of the DVD years and years ago, back when people watched stuff on DVDs.
I think you're right, and it's not too far from old great, as we call it, and they get mad at me, but my sister lived there forever, so tough. That's very close to Piddling and Slow Deatha.
Well, Brad, we really appreciate it. Be sure to check out Brad. He mentioned this earlier. Land debuted at Sundance in this past February. It's available on streaming platforms like Amazon Prime. Coming up Brad's going to co-star in The Last of Us for HBO. We mentioned shooting in Canada. And then for those in the Metroplex, Middletown, a funny new play explores the universe of small American towns. That's going to open in August. So here in less than 2 months in Richardson, Brad will be playing the lead role. Brad, it's always great chatting with you. Thanks so much for being with us for the first episode of the Straight Up Texas podcast presented by Whataburger.
Thank you, Jared and Jay, and go Rangers, because I know the new rule changes to improve the game will, speed the game up, give it more action. There's going to be less strikeouts and more hits, and people are going to go to some air conditioning and do it. And here's a quick more for advertising for everybody's favorite hamburger in this part everybody in this part of the world. It's Whataburger, so get you one. And thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, Brad.
There you go. Okay, the peaches and cream shake to go along with that burger. Jay, episode 1 of the books.
Yeah, this was great, man. I love having Brad on here, and getting to talk crawfish on a Monday morning is absolutely the way I'd like to spend my day.
Hey, I love you guys. Thanks for having me, buddy.
There you go. Thanks, Brad. And remember, you can always watch the Straight Up Texas podcast presented by Whataburger by going to the Rangers YouTube channel. You can listen, texasrangers.com/podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, anywhere that you can listen to podcasts, you can listen to the Straight Up Texas podcast presented by Whataburger. Well, for Jay Sauceda, for Tim Johnson and Hannah Wing, I'm Jared Sandler. Again, special shout out to our guest and our pal, Brad Leland. Looking forward to more of the Straight Up Texas podcast, so be on the lookout. We'll talk to you soon.
Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
Let's go, Rangers!